Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, November 21st. It is 7:30 p.m. This is the Westwood Board of Selectmen. We'll begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I ask my colleague to take the reins for a moment.
You want to just grant Westwood Media?
Oh, sure. We'll grant Westwood Media permission to audio and video.
At this moment, I would just like to acknowledge a tragedy that most people in the community have heard about by now that occurred a couple of days ago in Westwood. And there are a lot of impacted parties, so we would like to take a moment of silence just to hold them in our prayers, and also to acknowledge our public safety officials who have served the community with great distinction and dealt with a rather difficult experience. So again, a moment of silence.
Thank you, Nancy. We'll start with what will be a much-needed, exciting event on Sunday, December 3rd. We will have our 30th annual tree lighting ceremony. We are grateful this year for our sponsors, Prime Motor Group, Fox Hill Village, Dedham Savings Bank, American Legion Post, and Westwood Veterinary Care. The town collected over $7,000 in donations from individual contributors. And Mrs. Hurley's class, my neighbor Joy Hurley, her second grade class, will be joining us as special guests this year. There'll be horse and carriage rides sponsored by Prime Motor Dealership from 3:30 to 5. Stilt walking elves, face painting, arts and crafts, hot chocolate, cookies, dance performers, and more. This is always a fun event. It is usually about 10 below zero, but a fun time nevertheless. So I hope you will all join us. The first order of business this evening is a public hearing, an Eversource request for Conduit for electrical service to 150 Porter Street. Is there anyone here from Eversource?
Yes,
Good evening.
Hi.
You just
I know
stay.
you used to see Christine Cosby, but
Yeah.
she's not available tonight, so I'm taking her place.
All right. You want to tell us your name and your
Sure.
role
My
at
name is
Eversource?
Renee Banks Clark. I'm a right-of-way agent, just as Christine is at Eversource.
Okay.
And I'm here to represent Eversource to present this petition
Okay.
for 120 feet of conduit in Porter Street. That's to provide service to 150 Porter, new house.
Where is Porter Street?
Off of Canton. Off Canton.
Okay.
Is it an existing, it's an empty lot now?
It's an empty lot.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
I don't either. There might be public.
Christine will tell you that I normally ask about double poles. Did she tell you that?
Oh, no, she didn't.
Okay, then I won't ask you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Anybody from the public? Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody here speaking for or against? I'm sorry, ma'am.
Sure. My name is Michelle Cirillo. I'm at 159 Porter Street. And so I was wondering how the conduit was going to affect sort of whether it's going to be outside of our yard, the safety precautions. We have 3 young children
Yep.
that wait for the bus out there. And sort of if you can walk me through the process of how this is supposed to go, I would appreciate
Joe, why don't
that.
you join us? And do you have a
Okay.
map,
I
Renee?
do.
Yeah, so why don't you share the map?
Thank you.
Sure. And who are you?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. On the conduit, we intend to install the conduit coming from a pad mount handhole and a pad mount transformer that is in between. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses. Is that
159.
159 and?
Yes. Okay, so that is where I live at
That's where you
159.
live. Okay, so we'll be coming from that pad mount transformer,
Mm-hmm.
going across the street and then alongside the grass. Thank you.
That's love.
That's why you can.
And with the eyes.
Special delivery.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
So will the street then be sort of ripped up, or how does that work?
Well, they will dig a trench
Okay.
along this way and then alongside the sidewalk.
Okay. And what are
Yes.
what are sort of the safety features, just because I have the 3 children outside, so how, to the extent that there's a trench there during the day, sort of what precautions are
They
there?
do have plates that they put over the, if they're not present, and cones, and they do set up so that it'll be safe for the community.
And Todd, do you want to add anything? What the requirements the town has when they're digging the trenches?
once the
So
trench-
Todd's the director of public works.
Hi, nice to meet you.
You have everyone here today. Once the work is completed, we require Eversource to do proper backfilling, proper compaction, proper paving. I actually spoke to Chris Cosby regarding this the other day, and I believe you guys are looking to do this sooner.
Within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we typically shut down all of our excavation in town, permitting wise, around November 15th, but where the temperatures have been conducive, we're allowing them to proceed with this. So from our standpoint, we're more than comfortable with them doing this work.
But I think the question is though, when the trench is open, there is a requirement that's plated every night,
Yes.
right? The trench is never left unsecured.
No.
And during the day, there'll be somebody attending, right, obviously, not only the workers, but some safety. Okay.
So I mean, just so you know, and there's better history from my colleagues, we've never had a problem with Eversource. They do a lot of work in town, and we've always felt comfortable. But they're good questions.
I would think you would want to keep your children well clear of the
Yes.
work site, though.
But thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Any comments or concerns or anything else we can do?
I only have one last question, and it's sort of the timing of the work with the bus schedule in the morning. You know, because they actually wait
Yeah.
right there for the bus.
They
So-
generally set up around 9-ish around that time.
All right. Bus comes around 8:15, so that works. All right.
So you got the
Thank
late
you.
bus. I was gonna ask.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, I move we approve the grant of location to install approximately 120 feet of conduit at PMH number 1092, necessary to provide new electric service to a home being built at 150 Porter Street.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Is
you.
it-
Thank you.
Is there anyone here from GameStop?
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
You too. Thanks
Happy
for coming.
Thanksgiving.
Give Christine a good report. Is there anyone here from GameStop? No? Okay. So we'll move to the tax classification hearing. I was gonna take them out of order if they were here, but.
Maybe they're not coming.
Good evening, Board of Assessors.
Good evening.
How are you all?
Good, thanks.
So we know you all, but do you wanna just state your names?
Sure, I'm Maureen Blade.
Mark Murphy.
And I'm Debbie Robbins. I'm the full-timer.
Thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
So I believe you have a handout. So we just thought we'd take you page by page through the handout.
Perfect.
Terrific.
Probably takes 5 or 10 minutes. Please let us know if you have any questions as we go along. The second page of the handout. This is just a recap of the FY18 valuation information. Just to remind you that the date of valuation is precedes the fiscal year. So it is a look back in time a little bit. It's a little bit of a lagging indicator. So the date of valuation for fiscal year 18 is 1/1/17. And it's based on sales and other activity that's occurring in 2016. So at this point, some of this information could be 18 months old, up to a month old, as we sit here today at the end of 2017. We do pick up new growth as of June 30th of 2017, being valued as if it existed on 1/1/17. So any new growth after the valuation date and up to the end of June 30th, 2017 does get picked up and included in the FY18 budget. Just a bit of a recap on overall trends in valuation. The overall value increased just over 1% from fiscal year 17 to fiscal year 18. The residential values increased a little less than 1%, 0.7%. But within all of those homes, there's different trends.
Right.
Some trends some segments of that residential market are stronger, some are weaker, and we can go into which areas are the stronger ones and which are the weaker ones.
And I don't know if this is later on, but how does this compare to the past couple of years?
It's pretty similar, Debbie. I would say maybe not quite as strong as the preceding couple of years for residential value.
No, I think this is stronger,
Is it?
yeah, than it has been. We're still having bidding wars, but it's on that collective, all the lower valued homes that we're having the bidding wars on. Our multi-million-dollar homes are sitting stagnant, and when they are selling, they're selling for less than their assessed value. So, yeah, there's not a market for those. The millennials don't want any land. They don't want any big homes. They want a move-in condition, and it's showing in the market.
You can see it as you
So,
drive around town.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And there are some other pages here that kind of describe some of the different segments. 60% of the homes experienced an increase in value up to 4%. 20% of the homes experienced a value decrease of 2%, up to 2%. And commercial values increased by 3% from last year.
That's strong. That's good to see.
It is, and one of the other things that, and we've talked about this from year to year, is where do commercial values stand as a percentage of the
Right.
total town? And if you remember, a few years ago, as University Station was being developed, it was around 12%. I think in FY15, it's now just over 15%. That percentage probably would be greater if at the same time you weren't seeing strong growth on the residential side at the same time. So just a little bit of history there. This first chart represents just the total gross valuations of residential and commercial, and depicts the kind of the same information in a couple of different ways. I think that the chart on the bottom left is one that we've looked at in the past a number of times. And as you can see, starting in fiscal year 91, when commercial was 25% of the total town value, it had some significant drops, and in the last couple of years we've been able to it's been able to increase up to the 15%.
Maureen, did you ever think you'd see that?
Well, you know, I actually thought we would in some ways, only because I knew the effort we were putting on with commercial, but I don't think we ever anticipated how fast the residential would come on as well.
Yeah.
But you're right, 25%, that drop was when I actually first got involved with this, because you saw such a dramatic drop. There was a huge shift in the residential tax bills. That was back in that real estate recession back there.
Yeah.
So yes, I always aspired, we always hoped it would go back up, but as Mark said, the residential growth has really been what's unprecedented.
But to see a $43 million increase in the total value, I think it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The next page, this gives a breakdown of the number of homes in each of the categories. So if you look on the bottom axis, it's broken down into different value segments. So you can see where most of the homes are in the 400,000 to 999,000. You have about approximately 81% of the homes are in town are in those two segments. Smaller amounts below, and then three different steps higher than that.
Right.
And so, just help me out for a second. So when I look all the way over to the right, in fiscal year 12, there were 57 homes assessed over $2 million.
Yes.
and then there were 108, and then it dropped. There,
Loss of value.
Yes.
Right.
The assessment actually went down on
Over
that.
2 million.
Over 2 million.
And that has to do with the market. And like I said, the larger, higher priced homes haven't been selling. And we had to implement what they call a size adjustment this year. So as a result, some of their values dropped a little bit, and some of them may have dropped just below 2.
Right. This is something new that we asked Debbie and Pam to do for us this year, because we felt you often pegged that median house.
Right.
But because we saw what was happening at the top and the bottom of the market, we didn't think that was telling the full story. So this, and then another page in this presentation, we said, let's look at sort of what's happening in the spectrum.
No, exactly. Yeah, if you look to the one to the left.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
Yeah,
The under
assessment just moved
400.
over.
moved over to the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was shocking to me, what happened between FY12. We had 760 homes in that valuation, and now only 178 this year.
Right.
Well, with renovations, they just move into the next category.
Well, yeah, it's renovations, additions, and the market.
Yeah, right.
So it's like a combination of
It's very
those three.
interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Creates the perfect storm.
So the next page just provides some information on the new tax growth. The total new FY18 tax growth was just over 1.4 million. Town meeting had budgeted 950,000. 619,000 of that 1.4 million was from the residential side, which consists of new housing and renovations. And approximately 800,000 of that 1.4 was on the commercial side. That's from University Station, and also another significant addition was the auto dealerships on Route 1. University Station, there's, as I talked about earlier, this includes up to any growth or development up until June 30th. So anything that was being built after June 30th comes next year. And that, for example, down at University Station, that would be the new hotel and the new restaurant. Those will come online next year. The shift factor, as you know, in Westwood, we have a split rate, commercial rate being higher than the residential rate. We've been at a 1.7 shift now for several years, and we are recommending that we remain at the 1.7 shift. It would be possible to go higher, but the maximum you could do would be the 1.75. So we don't want to, it gives you no room to maneuver. If you decrease the shift, then you're pushing more onto the residential side. So with the 1.7% shift, that means that the commercial is paying essentially 170% of what they would have been if there was only a single rate. At 15% of the total value in town, that means commercial is paying almost 26% of the total taxes. And by way of comparison, commercial paid only 21% in FY15. So over the last 3 years, the percentage being paid by commercial has increased a good, 5%. 5%. The commercial rate, because it means that commercial's paying 100% of what they would have been paying, means that the residential is saving, and this year that number is approximately $1,300 average savings for a residential taxpayer. The next page, page 7. The first column here is what the current breakdown is for FY17 for residential as a percentage of the levy. For FY18, at the 1.7% shift, residential will make up 74.3% of the percentage of the levy, as opposed to last year when they were 74.8%. Commercial will increase from 25.2% to 25.7% at the current shift factor of 1.7. The tax rate will for residential will go from 1457 to 1509. That's a 3.6% increase, and the commercial will go from 28.2 to 29.3, which is a 3.9% increase. As you can see, the savings by using the split rate last year was approximately $1,200. This year is about $1,300. The next page summarizes the total taxes and provides some examples. So the total taxes as for FY17 was $70.5 million. It's increasing to $74 million. The sample home value is a median home value. So that the taxes, the value itself went from $598,000 to $604,000. With a tax bill at the recommended shift going from $8,700 to $9,100. That's a $400 increase, and about 4.6%.
So last year, if I remember correctly, we had the lowest tax increase in 9 years on the property tax. What was that percentage? It was 1.3.
Yeah.
It was 1.3, but a lot of that had to do with the fact that you did not spend $1.5 million that you had the opportunity to spend to keep that increase down.
Okay.
So the bottom chart here represents the median home at the residential tax rate going back for 10 fiscal years. So you can see just the what that represents.
Right. So over the 10-year period, it's about a 30% increase. Right. 6,000 to 9,100.
Yeah.
So 10 years, 30%, roughly 3%
a year. Yeah.
And then the last page, and this kind of this chart highlights some of the issues that we've been talking about, and Debbie was mentioning with the higher end homes. You can see here with the first example, the FY17 assessment would have been $2.55 million. This year, the assessment on that home will be $2.52 million. That's a 1.4% decline in the value, in the assessment. The taxes will go from $37,200 to $37,000, essentially $38,000. That's a 2.1% increase. That increase on that home is less than the theoretical average, because the assessment on that home came down and kind of ameliorated the impact of the increase.
Yeah, it's like reverse. The lower end assessment is the higher increase.
That's why we wanted this table, because really to look at the median price didn't tell you how this was playing out.
But as you can see in the chart, and there's a number of examples going from highest to lowest, what you can see is that the lower end of the market is very strong, and there's a lot of demand for those homes.
Well, I think it's also, there's demand for the properties because some are being bought and rebuilt. So it's not necessarily demand for the house itself.
Right,
Right, it could be demand for the land.
the land.
Well, I mean, there are two that just went under agreement on High Street, and I'm gonna wager that those won't stay in their current form.
Right.
They sold quickly.
Right. You're seeing we have a reval next year, but you're seeing a reset in the land value in some of these neighborhoods exactly because they're coming in and just paying a price and then knocking the house down. So that tells you that that's the price of the land for the most part. But we thought that this was a better way to take a look at
It's
it.
helpful. Yeah.
It also just reflects the strength of the community and the real estate market.
Okay.
So just to summarize, our recommendation is that that the Board of maintain the 1.7% shift in the tax factor.
Thank you for all your work on it. Any questions?
No, I think it's a little more straightforward this year than we had last year. I guess my only question would be, as you project out, as you look ahead in that crystal ball, based on what you know now, does it seem like we'll be able to hold on to that shift factor next year as well? Can you even? I know it's been a.
Yeah, I think we
Balance
can
issue.
still hold on to the shift factor. But yeah, my concern is our lower priced homes, always
Right.
has been.
Yeah, they're taking an increased
Because a
share
lot
each
of
year.
them, unfortunately, are elderly population, and I worry about them. I know we have exemptions and things in place to protect them, but,
It's hard.
But the other thing is that, and we've talked about this many times when we come in to do this every year, you would not do a shift factor now, because in order for the math to really work and for it to be meaningful, commercial should be 20% at least of the value of the town. And there was a time when it was 25 and it worked. But now even at 15%, although that's an improvement,
Yeah.
the benefit you get by, changing that shift factor a little, 172, 173, 174, you take away your options going forward, but you don't really get that much of a gain on the tax side. So,
But
so
if we had to eliminate it, it would certainly have a major consequence.
Huge
Oh,
on
it's
residential
huge.
tax.
Significant.
huge.
So that's
consequence.
more why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
And I'll get part
instead
B.
of $15 per thousand, your residential rate would probably be over $18 per
Right, so
thousand.
to the extent that that crystal ball ever indicates, I mean, I don't see it right now in
Right.
all the variables that go into this determination, but if you were to anticipate something, the sooner we know, the better, the sooner the community knows, the better.
Right.
Right. The last time we really faced that was back when you had sort of really depressed commercial values, when all the warehouses on University Ave were empty. There were no tenants.
Right.
And then you had vacancies up and down 109 even. People can't even remember that. I think it's when you start to see the market fall apart like that, that we don't have a lot of running room on
And
the
we've
shift
shored
rate.
up Route 1 with the auto.
That was
dealerships.
huge this year. That really
Yeah.
made the
Stabilizes
difference
that
this year.
commercial
That was
value.
most of the commercial
That was
growth
the
this
growth.
year.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was the growth.
What's the lowest the shift factor has ever been,
Oh, gosh,
you know?
1.5.
1.
Wasn't it one? And then it was
No,
allowed.
you mean the most we've ever shifted?
Yeah.
I think this is it, the 1.70.
We were at 175 at one point.
Oh, you
We'd
were
gone
at
up that high.
175?
It was at 1.5, and Mike would be better.
Oh, that was back in 94 though.
But then everybody got the chance to go to 175, and a lot, because there was a big shift in the economy. A lot went to 175. That was the highest we ever worked.
Yeah.
And then we spent a lot of years, and I know Nancy, you were involved in this, walking it back.
Gradually.
Walked it back to 1.65, and we were glad we did. 3 years ago? We actually needed to call on that to smooth out some of the disparity between residential and commercial growth.
Well, I remember the discussions when we were in that quick decline of commercial values and looking at University Avenue
Yeah.
and the zoning and
Yeah.
setting the stage for what we could do to bring vibrancy back to that and create real stabilized value. And I think, we're now reaping the benefits of all that
Right.
long, hard work.
Yeah.
And I mean, 15% is a good place to be. There's still land down there.
Yeah.
And there are other, there's acreage
There's
outside
opportunity.
there's opportunity. So hopefully, there's so many factors that go into
Right.
it.
Right, well,
But this is what we do every year. It's our
And
chance.
we did look, Pam and I looked at shifting to 1.75. It on the residential end, it made a huge increase for the commercial guy. And on the residential end, I believe it was less than 40%, 40 cents. It saved you on the tax rate.
Yeah,
It was,
so that's not a
Right.
good,
No.
that's not a good outcome.
And
It's
one
not
of
a
the,
good trade-off.
No, and one of the things we're always sensitive to is that commercial rate. It's universal for large properties and small. So although maybe the people on University Ave or Route 1 can handle
okay.
it hurts the ones on Washington Street and 109. They don't get a small commercial rate versus a big commercial rate. So we're very sensitive to that.
Okay. I move that we approve the tax classification factor of 1.7 for fiscal year 18.
I'll second.
Any public commentary? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
Have a
you
nice
again.
Thanksgiving. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Doug.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you,
Thanks.
Maureen.
Good evening, have a seat.
How are you?
Thank you, have a seat. Are you Rob Lawrence?
I am.
Well, good evening, Rob, how are you? Okay, so we have before us a request for a one-day permit for extended hours of operation in accordance with general bylaws of the Town of Westwood, Chapter 321, retail hours of operation, Chapter 321-2, one-day permit for extended hours of operation on Black Friday at GameStop, located at 207 University Avenue, and this would be for Friday, November 24th, 2017. So your hope is, in terms of hours, is to open up at midnight
Yes, ma'am.
and run to 6 a.m.? Well, you'll keep running,
stay
but
open until
the 12 to
10
6
o'clock
a.m.
at
is
night,
is
yeah.
the request. Christine, and separate from your request, this would be the only business at this point that would be doing that then?
Correct. We just, even though the board issued a permit to Target and they
They
have
changed
requested
their
it,
plans.
Target Corporation changed their plans to be a 6 a.m. open.
That's what
Okay.
we were last year.
Right, and
Well, we
then,
weren't there last year, but the
Yeah.
year before.
Okay, so in
So-
spite of that, you still would like to do it, that
I'm
Target has nothing?
$19,000 down for the year for plan. I'm hoping to make it up that night with them being closed, to be quite honest with you.
There you go,
So,
okay. Anything else that we need to know, Christine? This has been reviewed by the chief, no police details necessary?
yeah, crowd control management, did we get information?
I think we received information, it would
Okay.
be no more than 3 employees at the site. Rob, I believe, is going to be at the Braintree store and
Yep.
available if there's an issue. The layout in the store is designated for if there's a line that forms.
Yeah.
Chief Silver reviewed the plan
He
and had no
doesn't, the
concerns.
chief isn't requiring a detail, but he is having the police the officers on notice that night to check the area and make sure, so they're
He told me he
aware.
would do it like a drive-by. here and there.
Drive-bys and make sure that there was nothing.
Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Anything from the public? Okay, you
Hope
wanna?
you make back your 19 grand.
I hope so too. I hope so. It's
you wanna
starting
do the
to
motion?
Yes, I'll do a
much better
motion.
end of the year than
So I
the
move that we grant a one-day permit for extended hours of operation in accordance with Mass General bylaws of the Town of Westwood, Chapter 321-2, granting a one-day permit for extended hours of operation to GameStop, located at 207 University Avenue on Friday, November 24th, 2017, in accordance with the stipulations of the police chief.
I'll second that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good luck.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Do now. Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Yeah.
Happy Black Friday.
Yes, that Green Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know. John?
Yeah, for right now.
Okay. You're up.
Gentlemen? Todd? I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Ken Ho with the Beta Group.
So, we had in our packets last month the most recent traffic study for Dover and Conant in that area. I read it as kind of good news, bad news,
Yeah,
but the speeds have gone down, but the volume has gone through the roof.
went up a little.
So, well, I didn't think it went up a little.
It all depends on how you looked at it. When I say little, it's the percentage, it varies on certain street. Some it's a lot higher than the others. Some it's 4%, 5%. If you look at Lorraine, it's high, but then if you look at the actual number of cars, it's high because when we did the pre, it was, nothing, and now went up to like 32, so that's like 32% increase, so that's high.
Yeah, I thought High Rock though, it was like over 100 cars difference.
Oh, yes, yes.
So High Rock in 2013, this is the speeds, I'm sorry. This is the volume. So if we look at High Rock in 2013, the volume is 560, it's gone to 689. That's a significant difference on what should be a secondary road. Right?
On High Rock, correct, yes.
So when I had spoken to Mike, I've kind of long felt, and I felt that we have this data in our hands, so we need to come up with some strategy. And I think it's really three-pronged, and I know you're seeking state funding for the
109,
109
correct.
sensors, adaptable.
Yes.
I do think there needs to be a discussion about 109 between Summer Street and the highway. It makes no sense to me that it goes 2 lanes, 1 lane, 2 lanes in such a short period of time. But I think in the immediate, and maybe you can shed some light on this,
Sure.
why we cannot do something about extending the light cycles on 109 now. So particularly at Gay Street and Summer Street. And it seems to me it's somewhat of a policy question in that we don't favor the throughway, which is 109, and which I think we should. And we should be incentivizing people to stay on 109 rather than cut through the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So that was the 3 things that I was hoping we could start talking about tonight.
Okay. I think in terms of timing, I know we have looked at it in 2009 in terms of trying to play with the timing, and we also have looked at see what we can do, especially on 109 at the Summer Street approach heading towards 128, and we made observation at the time. There were the marking. The marking was faded, and then there aren't any sign that telling people it's actually a 2 through lane.
Right.
So it's really a through and a left and a through. And so what we have done is we highlighted the marking and we added some what we call lane use signs, just so that in the winter, if snow cover up the marking, there's a sign up that you can still see. So we did that to try to encourage people that, hey, it's not just 1 lane, it's really 2 lane. And we did that, and we also made observation that, unfortunately people are still, trying to stay on more the right lane because of the left
But they
turn.
are, because what happens is if you get into the left,
Yep.
and you unfortunately get up for your turn to go, and
Yeah.
the other light is green now, you risk sitting through the entire cycle waiting for that guy in front of you
Oh,
to take
for
his
the
left.
left turn?
So it's
Okay.
real. So I'm not sure you're the expert, but I'm not sure I agree that it's a through, a left, and a through. Because
That's what it's meant to be.
that's what it's meant to be. But in
Right.
practice, what happens is no one gets in the left
Yep.
unless they're
Not
really
often.
going to take a left.
Right.
So I guess that goes back to my question about the cycling. Could that be a dedicated green, leaving incoming into Westwood red,
Yeah.
and leaving that green longer?
It certainly that can be looked into to see how long can we extend that leading green, just to let that left turn get out of the way so the through movement can
Right.
proceed. Yeah, that is certainly an option, and the other thing we could look into is to see how long that extended green for 109, how much we could extend so that we don't penalize the side street too much. That's the other thing
That's
we
what I
want
was
to.
gonna say, we have two neighborhoods that would be impacted if we light up green on 109.
But I think
Yeah.
every time we've gone through this discussion, though, we get really wrapped up in the neighborhood. And I think we fail to recognize that there's neighbors who live along 109. And they have cars idling in front of their houses for extended periods of time. So I guess that's the policy question that I think
Right.
we need to decide, and I don't think we ever really have. Do we favor the neighborhoods? Do we favor the thoroughfare?
Fortunately for us, it's you three that would make that decision, not us.
I agree. I agree.
You know, we'll implement whatever policy you
Well,
guys
I think
wanna
there's
set.
also something that is happening, and because I observed it as somebody who would cut through the neighborhood to get through Needham in my commute, that some people cut through the back streets and come up Summer Street to the light and avoid 109 to get to said same light. And they doing it enough, you start finding which one is the path of least resistance.
Right.
And it's all relative. It's more time to cut through the neighborhood, but quicker to get through the intersection. And that speaks to what John's talking about,
Right.
that the side street has enough of a benefit that they'll stay off 109 and go through the neighborhood to get to that light.
And I think
So-
that's the balance we have
Yeah.
to draw.
Yeah, that's the
If you
balance.
look at the people who take the left off of 109 onto High Rock in the morning, these hundreds and hundreds of people,
Right.
they're
coming
not
from-
going to Needham. They're coming from Westwood or they're coming from Medfield.
Yeah.
They go down High Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They take the right on Dover. They
Right.
weave through the neighborhoods.
Right.
And they've saved a bunch of time.
Right.
And that time should really be captured by the green light on 109.
Right.
We should be incentivizing people to stay on 109.
Yeah.
So you still have the two neighborhoods though, that there is no.
Fitting it out.
Right across the street here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Over here, and then behind Dedham Savings.
Yeah.
that-
But I'm not looking to do anything with them.
Well, if this was teed up green longer, it's tough enough for those residents. I know there's one in particular in the room that would speak on behalf of that. Right,
No, but I think
But I wanna say Mike, and I wanna say this came up in the past with respect to trying to work the signalization on 109, that those neighbors in one, I believe it's a neighborhood, I can't even draw on a blank. Is
But
that-
Todd, I think
Oxford.
Oxford. the
I think you
Oxford
can leave them out of it. I think if the light cycle at Summer Street
You're saying just primarily Summer
is
Street.
summer,
Yeah.
and the one at Hartford. What happens at Hartford is you get the green. By the time the people pulling out of Starbucks have cleared the way, no one has moved. And because they haven't moved, they take the left on High Rock. I mean, you can literally sit through 2 and 3 light cycles
Yeah.
and just see the people from Starbucks kind of clearing up and one car make it through.
Yeah.
I think these are fine.
I agree.
Starbucks
with you though, with,
Love it when they come out
I
and
agree with
take
you
a
with
left.
Summer Street, because in theory, what you're gonna be doing is
Yeah.
almost penalizing people that are trying to cut through. and
People that
use
have cut through the
Summer Street
neighborhoods.
left. I would err on the side of caution with these, but I agree, like the Summer
I don't think you
Street
need to touch
definitely.
these. I think it's Hartford and Summer.
Can you make these two lights coming out of the neighborhood, can they be traffic, cognizant? In other words, nobody's there, the light
That's,
doesn't go.
so, getting back to the initial point,
It
Ken
does
and I met with, District 6
Yeah.
about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we're pursuing the adaptive traffic signalization, and what that's gonna be able to do is allow all of our traffic signals to communicate to one another. The signal, I believe, refreshes every 25 to 30 seconds based on what the type of flow is. Very, very, very high tech, but I don't wanna call it our last resort, but assuming the town doesn't want to embark, and I know they don't, on this endeavor to create another lane up by Louderbrook or anything extreme like that, I think this is essentially our last hope, along with potentially looking for now at Summer Street and maybe.
I mean, I don't.
Well,
I
with
think.
that.
I think to be honest with you, from where we are now, we can't do any worse.
No, I agree.
Like I think that we really should try to adjust Hartford and adjust Summer. And I just don't think anybody. I don't think any of the neighborhoods will be negatively impacted. If anything, I think it'll improve the quality of life in those cut-through neighborhoods.
Although, I gotta be honest with you, John, with Waze, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Waze tells you present time.
That's the
What's
yeah.
the easy way to go? So if you
But
can
if we
change
have-
the lights,
But if the flow is better, Waze will take you off.
not, well.
Right
it
now,
goes by
Waze is
speed.
pushing people.
Goes by
Waze
speed.
will work off the shortest time.
Right,
So-
so one way or another.
Yeah, but it's worth a try. I'm not opposed as long as it meets specific guidelines that we have to meet, and I don't wanna create any situations where our neighborhoods are impacted.
Well, I
i.e.
think
these
you
two
would,
here.
it's subtle changes. I don't think you would ever do anything dramatic. You would do it in increments so that, I mean, hopefully, if you do it, it doesn't dramatically impact people and you just say, okay, now we can just maybe adjust it a little bit further and see if there's a point where it just kind of naturally adjusts itself. I wouldn't, if you do anything dramatic, it throws everybody off and then.
Well, what is the
The-
length, what is the length that
Screaming.
like Summer Street stays green right now?
I was going to get into, the overall cycle length.
Yeah, let's do that.
So, for example, typically for, 109, we would like to have the cycle length to be about 120 seconds. So basically, if you're on 109, start of a green, you go through the whole cycle, serving the side street, and if there's a pedestrian to push a button and all that. So it's about 120-second cycles. So one of the things that we could test, for lack of a better term, as Nancy had indicated, is to extend it to make it longer. So basically, you're adding say 120 to 130 seconds. You could go to 140 seconds. So we could try it out 130-second cycles. So that 10 seconds, really, what we're adding is to the main street, but keeping the
the
side
same.
street the same green time, but they have to wait 10 seconds longer. So that's really what that means. And if that seems to be working, we could increase it to 140-second cycle.
Right. No,
So
I
now
agree.
we're adding 20 seconds to the main line, but still keeping the side street, not penalizing the green time, but the only thing is they just have to wait a little longer.
Right, but the length of green will be the same.
Right. So that's something that we could play with in terms of the timing.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want to change too many variables at the same time.
Right.
Can I add a
Yeah.
request? Is it possible to have a lag in the lights that allows the traffic on 109 to clear for the side street traffic to come out? Because while it might not be much to add a 10-second delay to a single cycle, it's often the case that there are 2 and sometimes 3 cycles to get one car out of a neighborhood because the traffic on 109 doesn't leave a break. It blocks the intersection, and even if it keeps the intersection clear, the traffic doesn't leave an opening, so that one car can't even.
You know, I see that
Yeah.
most nights. People roll through the yellow and then they're blocking the side.
Right. So I don't know if
So I
it's
know
possible to
they've
have a
stopped to
lag.
mark in some of these areas, like, no stopping, and they basically design it on the ground.
Yeah,
That during a red light, you should not be in this
right,
zone.
with traffic markings.
Right,
Yeah,
We
we,
have signage with these 2
I know.
early Oxford, but
the signs
like
don't.
anybody,
not
it
work.
doesn't work. you know,
Right.
We
so
have a
as soon as
fire
you
station.
decide-
People
yeah,
stop
we
in
can-
front of the fire station.
So let me
They
ask
jam
this.
it
I
up.
mean, so going to the 130, like what? So next steps in that. What is the next steps? Like, how do we physically program these? How does that happen?
We can definitely physically do this, but I think we'd have to take a look at what we feel comfortable with incrementally here. I still think, well, my recommendation, and again, for you guys to decide, would be maybe take a peek at this and see what we can do, again, incrementally. But I think our final answer to this whole puzzle is gonna be the adaptive signalization.
Well, I agree.
And I think we keep that as our, like, this is a, part-time
Right.
evaluation, trial, and let's embark on this adaptive endeavor. Hopefully town meeting supports the initial investment that the town has to make.
Well, I agree. There's a long term, but there's an immediate.
Right.
Like we
Right,
just
I don't
can't
want
be
the- yeah,
in possession of this data and do nothing.
yeah, as long as the immediate doesn't put us in, a thing on Monday morning where traffic is backed all the way up to 495.
That's why I suggest the subtle changes.
Definitely.
So, but how do we implement now this 130?
so typically, there's a signal contractor, whoever that comes out and,
Mass Bay.
Mass Bay, so they will implement the actual timing. The other thing that we could look at in addition to the incremental, the cycle length is, there are programming in there, which they call it dynamic max. So what that means is, say for example, if the side street, depending on the time of the day, if it doesn't have that high demand, for example, as I was coming here, around 7:30, your Main Street, it's still backed up, heading, towards the other direction. And on your side street, your demand is really, there's probably about 5 cars and on that many. So what that programming does, it's on your side street, if it happens twice in a row where at some point you need to let those 3 cars, 5 cars out on the side street. They can't wait forever. So you can tell the program that, if there are only 3 cars, but it didn't serve the maximum times. For example, you set it for 15 seconds. 3 cars will take about, say, 10 seconds. There's 5 seconds left that's not being used.
Right.
So you can tell the program where do you want that 5 seconds to go if it happens twice
Oh, I get it.
or
Okay.
3 times.
That,
You
that,
can-
yeah,
you
our,
can
our
set it.
existing infrastructure would allow that?
You can set it. I have to look at what you have out there. I know it's been about probably at least 7, 8 years old, the controller. So I want to see if you can actually do that. So it's all programming. So those are the features that you can test it out to see.
And can it unwind in the same way?
You can set it, to run this dynamic max between 7 to 8 or 8 to 9. So once you're out of that zone, it'll go back to whatever you want it to run.
So maybe checking the box on this. So can we set like a deadline of like a month out?
Sure.
And you'll come back and report on how the incremental's working, and what we've implemented there? Okay.
I think
And-
we want to look at it too during, I mean, this is a good time of year, I
Right.
suppose, to do it. However, you might have weather that impacts.
Like if you were to set it,
probably want to look at this over
if you were to,
not necessarily a month, maybe over a 2-month, 3-month span where you could have,
Yeah.
like weather not
Any
impacting
different
its
circumstances.
vacations and this and that, right?
but it might be nice to change that adding the 10 seconds during that,
Sure.
that Christmas to New Year period,
Yeah.
right? I mean, volume's way
Transition,
down.
yeah,
Okay, so we'll talk in January about how that's going.
sure.
The adaptive technology, do you need us to do anything?
No, just, we're gonna bring it forward hopefully to
With the
spring,
budget?
spring ATM, yeah, it's a capital request as we speak right now, so, I mean, it's something that I've always been confident with the Complete Streets program, and I don't wanna say too much, but after leaving the meeting with District 6, I'm almost as confident that we'll have a contribution from the state.
I thought you were gonna say town meeting, after leaving town meeting.
Well, we need town meeting support though for the design and to move this forward.
And I read, there are municipalities that have put this in.
Yes, the latest and the greatest is Framingham, right?
Correct.
That's,
Somewhere,
that's
yeah.
the most recent technology. There have been communities that have dabbled with the previous technology, and I'm not quite sure how that has gone.
I mean, the city of Framingham.
City of Framingham,
Not yet.
right?
Wait a
So
few more days.
again, it would be great for the town to support this at town meeting, and then have the state contribute to construction funding, and I'm pretty confident that will hopefully happen.
And so in long term, probably after the adaptive technology, I mean, should we be having a discussion about continuing the 2 lanes from Summer to the highway? Will that help?
I think anytime you add lanes, it certainly helps. And I think the concern is potentially right-of-way impact
Yeah.
along that section. So I think way back when we took a quick look at it, just using GIS mapping and
Yeah.
assuming we have to keep the bike lane
Right.
accommodations to provide at least 2 through lane heading towards 128. And so there are some right-of-way impact, so that's something that you would have to consider.
Outbound, I don't think there is.
Yeah, there's two
Outbound.
properties.
No,
Yeah,
but
you
they
do.
already have the 2 lanes.
We have the town pound.
The town pound, right?
I don't know, feel too
We might be able to
comfortable
get, we might be able to get
actually-
their approval.
This is something we expressed to the state though, when we were making our pitch to possibly have them contribute, is that the problem lies in Westwood, but it's almost created more so by the other
Other
communities
towns,
tailing
yeah.
up. So I guess what my gut feeling is, I don't wanna do anything that's gonna impact our residents, where it's almost other neighboring communities that are,
Benefiting.
right. And that's, the state really bought it, it's obvious, it's not just our problem, we just happen to lay at the end of
Right,
the rope
right.
and So I
But
don't,
when I come out of my street in the morning, and I live really close to the Dover Walpole line, and I look left, I mean, it's a long stream.
yeah,
Right.
They're coming from Walpole, Medfield, Millis.
and there's no choice. I mean, you can't
Right.
fault anybody.
Right.
We just happen to lay where we do.
Some of them take Hartford.
We want to incentivize them to stay where they're at. It sounds like we have a plan. All right, so we'll meet again.
Yes.
We'll talk again.
Yep.
Thank you for your information.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you.
New business. Does the MMO extension have to occur tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. Who's gonna speak to it?
I can.
Okay.
We're all waving their hand.
I think they were saying bye.
MMO is requesting to renew the lease at the exact same terms, one more year at $84,000 a year, payable in monthly installments.
You're not worried?
No,
timing's
we've been
up.
doing this for a few years. It's an interim condition while we consider whether there'll be something different at Islington. I don't see any concerns. I'd recommend that you renew the lease.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I am too.
I'm fine too. The only question I have is, I mean, okay, we keep keeping their rent at the same rate, but are they going up on their fees that they're charging people?
That I don't
No?
know. I know that we've heard from them that they do not have much of a cash holding,
Right.
that they can contribute more. So I believe they're keeping pretty close to their operating costs. Their tuition costs may be raising, but they're going up, but their operating costs are going up at the same rate. So I don't have the exact numbers, but they've told us that there's not a cushion there.
Yeah, I mean, I just say, you know, maybe we should at least be increasing inflation, you know, for utilities in the bill. They pay separate utilities? Probably
They
not.
do not, so their lease payment
It's
gives
flat.
them janitorial services.
All in?
Yes, all utilities, that's a single payment.
Okay.
You all right with it?
Well, I mean, I'm just curious to know, that's all. At this late rate, and this could be the last year they're in there, so.
Right.
I mean, I just look at it and say, okay, I understand, and residents are always fighting for it, and I understand everything about it, but I just say, you know, why are we taking on more of a burden?
Well, I can tell you that they're hoping to move to a new space. If the Islington Center restoration project goes forward, then they would move to new space, and they would do that at the same rate, at the same one-year term. They don't expect their rents to increase. They expect to continue their school in the same manner, just in new space. So the idea is that if the town was willing to continue at the same rate, one-year term, same lease rate, as long as necessary until they could move to their new space, that would be the ideal situation from MMO's point of view.
Okay, I move that we extend the Mother's Morning Out nursery school lease for a year with the expiration date of August 31st, 2019, at the annual rate of $84,000 payable in $7,000 monthly increments.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, request to post and fill civilian dispatcher.
Hello, Joan.
Good evening.
So, we, the police department usually, the police and fire, public safety usually runs with 4 part-time dispatchers. I don't have off the top of my head how many full-time dispatchers we have. In the last year, 1 full-time dispatcher left our employment. A part-time dispatcher was promoted to that full-time position, and another part-time dispatcher left the town to go pursue something else. So we currently have 2 part-time dispatchers, and we'd like to replace those 2 part-time ones. They're sort of on-call. It's in the budget. We just haven't filled those spots.
So you're filling for 2 civilian dispatchers?
We're looking for 2 part-time dispatchers, and then we are well positioned if there's more turnover or, you know.
Right. I'm fine.
pretty
don't have any
standard.
questions.
Okay, I move we authorize the police chief and fire chief to work with the human resource director and town administrator to post and fill 2 part-time civilian dispatcher positions.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Nora, are you gonna talk about this grant application?
Yeah, so very briefly, I can tell you that the towns of Dedham, Norwood, and Westwood have put in a joint application for a grant to fund a regional economic development plan. It would have individual economic development plans for Westwood, Dedham, and Norwood, and then a regional plan for how the 3 towns could coordinate to achieve the most in each town.
I was a little bit surprised only because the portfolio in Dedham and Norwood is so different than Westwood.
It is, but we can build off of each other. And one area that we would like to look into as we look into these plans is transportation between the 3 centers, especially shuttle bus transportation.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
that's part of the plan, and this would be an opportunity to get funding from the state to do the initial data collection and to begin the process.
No, would you guys be including the Neponset Valley Chamber of Commerce into
Yes.
this too? Yes.
They would be contacted and participate in the planning.
So Norwood doesn't have a counterpart to you and John Sisson, do they?
No, they have a town planner who handles economic
Okay.
development for the town.
So that's who's engaged in this with
It
you?
is, yeah, Paul Halkiotis.
Okay.
So you don't need anything from us. It's just an FYI.
No, just it's just an FYI. You know, I would think that it's something that
It's great.
you'd support.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
You know,
I don't
it's-
think
it's-
I don't think I need a letter of support at this time. The grant
Never a bad
application
grant
is in.
application.
Well, and also it is nice to partner with neighboring communities. Anytime now that the state sees that in whatever forum, whatever
Yes.
setting, that's viewed very
It's something that-
favorably.
That's right. We had done a bicycle and pedestrian plan with Dedham several years
yeah.
ago, and that was actually very successful because it's better than looking at any of us in an island. You look
Right.
at the connections between them. So I think from economic development point of view, we may have more in common with Dedham than we have with Norwood, but there's still
Well, and John's a great guy, and he has a lot of connections, having worked at the state at one point, so
and he took the lead on writing the grant application. So we're very
for him.
thankful for that.
good guy.
Well, good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You'll let us know?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
And the accept cultural council
So we have a
funds?
new, you gave us something new tonight for this, right, Christine?
I did.
New handout tonight.
Someone gonna talk to it?
I can. It's so every year the state disperses funds to the local cultural councils, and we get a standard $4,500 every year from them. So what happens is the state disperses it to the town, and the town transfers it to the local council. The cultural council runs a grant program every year. I didn't check. I think their applications are open now. And they give that out at the end of the fiscal year. So, and they usually give out the full $4,500. So basically us
So-
accepting it and transferring it over.
It runs the same as town budget. Yeah, yeah.
Correct.
Good.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay, I move the selectmen authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to sign the contracted authorized signatory listing identifying Michael Gillette, Town Administrator, and Pam Dukeman, Finance Director, as the authorized signatory names for the Massachusetts Cultural Council transfer of funds totaling $4,500.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, old business. We need to do this tonight,
We don't.
alright, can we skip it? Westwood Media Center transfer of funds, I think needs to happen, right?
Standard.
That's standard, let's make a motion.
Yeah. I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the transfer of $20,833.42, $3,333.36, and $41,518.49 for a total of $65,685.27 to the Westwood Media Center per the Comcast license agreements and the Westwood Media Center agreement signed by the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay.
Can we just go back? I think we have to amend that. I just said Comcast license agreement, but it's Comcast and Verizon.
Verizon. So-
So I'll amend my motion.
Okay, and I'll second the amended motion.
All in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Do we have minutes?
We have third quarter capital release,
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
page 93.
We'll just make a motion.
Let's see, we have, I move that we approve the release of third quarter capital request, $20,000 to the IT department for end-user technology, and $49,600 to the police department for a vehicle, totaling $69,600 for the third quarter.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't think we have,
Executive session.
No minutes.
no on the collective bargaining, right? John?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, what's the date of our next meeting?
We do have executive session.
I know that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I
No,
thought
that's all right.
you were saying
Sorry.
that.
Monday the 4th.
December 4th. At this time, the Board of Selectmen will be going into executive session to discuss one issue related to the acquisition, transfer of real property, which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if discussions were in open session. The board will not be returning to open session. Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Side?
I move we go into executive session for the aforementioned reason.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
We could just go into executive session.
Okay.
You're gonna,
Next meeting?
Our next meeting will be held on December 4th, Monday, December 4th. Thank you.